It's been, let's see, it's been about 5 months since your book came out, The Parkinson's Plan. Um, I'm sure there's plenty of other videos that you've done that can tell about what the book is and whatever. So Karl and I wanted to dig a little deeper to ask some of the questions that you probably have answered somewhere along the way, but a little deeper than you know, the some of the early videos you've done.
What feedback have you received from the broader medical community regarding the Parkinson's plan approach and recommendations?
I'll let Michael go with that.
Yeah, so the feedback that we've received has been terrific, and and I should just say that not all feedback is positive, not all feedback is pat you on the back, not all feedback is negative, and the vast majority of what we've heard has been positive. We have uncovered when we picked up those stones. Ray and I realized there's a lot of pent up frustration in the persons with Parkinson's disease, the caregivers. And I think we didn't completely realize that folks didn't know things. They're like, why didn't I know this about the association of these chemicals with dry cleaning, with pesticides and and air quality? Why didn't I know these things? And so I think part of what we uncovered was a really important dialogue emerged about hey, we need to move like cardiac and heart disease and blood vessels, cholesterol. We're thinking about all these preventative things that we can do, and so we need to wake up in the morning and we need to be thinking about prevention with Parkinson. And also, people now kind of understand that even if you have Parkinson, these things are really important for you to be doing. So if you're smoking and you get lung cancer, the first thing your doctor says is stop smoking, right? Because you're contributing to that. So you want to remove these things from your environment, regardless. The other things that we've heard a lot about is the idea that we need to be looking upstream, for therapies and learning why, and thinking about making real investments and not looking at all those animals that are dead at the bottom of the stream and saying they keep hitting their head on the rocks at the bottom of the stream. We need to walk up that stream, see what's going on, and that's the learn why part of the book. The amplification of voices and expanding the patient is the sun model has been really has resonated a lot with people, and I think that we just need to be doing things differently with chronic diseases and HIV and cancer and others. And so I think the message there is great, but the frustration that also comes with that message is, yeah, you say this, and how are we going to get there? And so I think part of the plan is how we're going to get there. And then the segmentation of the navigation of, of new ideas and plans into short, medium, and long-term goals and ways that we can approach that, I think has been, quite popular as we're talking to folks. But I think that it's been very clear to us that there are 12 million people with Parkinson. Don't leave the people behind. And so if you spend all of your dollars on the people that either don't have Parkinson or on early Parkinson, you to be paying attention to everybody with Parkinson's disease. And so I think the PLAN has been a really great follow-up to our last book where we talked about the PACT, prevent, advocate, care, and treat. I think the prevent, learn why, amplify voices for a new care model, and navigate new therapies has been great. But we have uncovered, a brewing frustration in the community that we need to really be aware of these things. And then we awoken a sleeping giant of scientists who were maybe doubting a lot the environmental data. And now I think as they're digging more and more into the environmental data, they're starting to say, wait a minute, maybe Dorsey and Okun are not as crazy as we think. We still think they're crazy, but like maybe they're not as crazy because there's so many studies from so many different regions. And so it's been a really whirlwind tour for us. And I think that it has brought forward the dialogue that we so desperately need to move the needle.
I'll give you a little vignette. So yesterday I had a great conversation with Dr. Justin MacArthur, who's the chair of neurology at Johns Hopkins Medicine. his father has had Parkinson's disease, and he was kind enough to provide an endorsement for both our books. And he was talking about how can we roll this out more broadly, this focus on preventing brain disease, not just Parkinson's, but Alzheimer's, but autism, ALS, and other disease, dementia with Lewy bodies. What can we do more broadly as a community, as individuals, as neurologists, to prevent these terrible diseases?
I agree with you 100%, both of you. I think you did wake up a sleeping giant. For many years that we went to conferences and we would sit around after the sessions and talk about some of the things that we thought were the reason why,
Some similarities.
the similarities. But, there really wasn't I don't want to say venue. There really wasn't an avenue, I guess, to raise those. And I think there were times where there was a lot of discount because we were just discounted for having these anecdotal stories. You guys really provided the research. I mean, the digging of the fact that the last quarter of the book is all the resources and the references. That wasn't what we had as people living with Parkinson's and Carepartners. We didn't have that data, but you did a tremendous job corralling it all together and putting it in one spot and pairing it with the anecdotals, the personal stories. I think that's what lends it so much credibility.
And for so long, it was all about genetics, loading the gun, and the environment pulling the trigger. I think
I said that for many decades myself.
I think some people don't even have, only 13% of people have genetic underlying risk factors that we know of. So I think environment is doing more than pulling the trigger.
So Michael, to get back to what you said, how do we go as Carepartners and people with Parkinson's and help our clinicians integrate this into traditional neurological care, the son, patient being the son, and then the rest of us in the universe are surrounding them?
Yeah, so I think it's a journey, a challenge that has been met by other diseases. And so I start there because I know it seems like when you have Parkinson, it's like so far away. It's like, don't talk to me, Okun, about like how you are able to care for people at the Fix Cell Institute, because I live, in Topeka, Kansas, and no discredit to Topeka, Kansas, great city, but be realistic here as to what is going on. And I think that when we reflect, we can all agree that the American healthcare system, and this isn't true around the entire world, but it's true in many countries, in the American healthcare system, the chess pieces exist in all places. Okay, we have physicians, we have public health, we have rehabilitation specialists, we have the pieces, okay, that are there. And so, when folks are worried about, like this is not scalable, this is not doable, I want to remind people that the chess pieces exist. We must place them on the board and move them more effectively. The second thing is just an appreciation, Karl and Angela, for the idea that when we integrate care for any chronic disease, it becomes not only better outcomes for the folks and for the families, but it reduces cost. This has been shown over and over again. And we point out, at least in our book, things in HIV and in cancer. And so I think the wake-up call for all of us is to be thinking about chronic diseases and how we are doing it wrong. The third point is preventative medicine doesn't always mean prevent the disease. There are different aspects to preventative medicine, and certainly, the best, cure for any disease is to prevent it altogether. And we don't want to pass it to the next generation. There are things we can do there. Once you have a disease, we need to be preventative. We're doing that in diabetes, right? We're checking people's hemoglobin A1Cs even before they get diabetes in regular visits. Now we're starting to get smart to this, and we're watching trends, And there are like subtle things that have happened in the healthcare system that you probably don't pay attention to, but are important. The electronic medical record, okay, changed the game. The idea that you can log in and look at your data and sometimes see the data and the results even before your healthcare team sees it is a game changer. You can track yourself, and then you can hit a button and you can see the trends. You can see the trends of your cholesterol. You can see the trends of your blood sugars and your hemoglobin A1C, so that you can then begin to make decisions, on what will be best for you tomorrow. Okay. And so I think in the Parkinson realm, I think we need to begin to, the word I would use is adopt. Another word would be implement. Another word would be embrace. I think we need to be thinking about how we can move into this realm, where we move the chess pieces differently, even in zip codes that don't have expertise. We learn how to funnel our expertise, and we pay attention to chronic disease, trying to prevent the preventable from people getting it for the next generation, but also for people who have it, making sure that we're using the data to care for them. And right now, Karl and Angela, it's people like you that are being your own self-advocates. This should be built into any system. It's going to save the healthcare system so much money, and it's going to save a lot of suffering, and it's going to improve outcomes. And so that's the way that I try to think about it. And perhaps it's an overly optimistic view, but I consider myself an optimist. So
me too. Well, and I would say the one component you speak about it in your book, Ray's talked about it for over a decade at least, is the telemedicine piece for the people that do live in very rural areas and cannot get a movement disorder neurologist. The capacity to be able to log in and be able to be seen by someone like you who has that background, I think is vitally important. We can't just leave that in the sidelines. Yes, COVID pushed it forward like a rocket, but we have to continue that type of work. It's such a relief, particularly for those families and those care partners that are trying to get their loved one to someone who understands this condition. And it's not an easy condition to understand.
Yeah. So we increasingly have the means to care for anyone, anywhere. I think one of the things that struck both Michael and me is how, on our listening tour across the country, is how poor of care people are receiving. I'm staying next to a 40-year-old man in El Paso, Texas, who nearly fell from a standing position next to me, and I wouldn't have caught him. I've met an 82-year-old man whose 83-year-old wife is bedbound, wasn't able to attend a presentation in Dallas, and she was on a very low dose of levodopa, far less than what might be beneficial for her. We have the means to deliver care to anyone, anywhere. We need to make sure that we have the policies in place that we allow, making sure that Medicare continues to cover telemedicine. And then we need to champion some of the people like the Parkinson's Voice Project in Dallas, which offers free speech therapy to anyone in the country. Dance for Parkinson's Disease, I think, offers free dancing content. Rock Steady Boxing offers lots and lots of content in lots of communities. And only a small minority of individuals are like Karl and Angela Robb, who know everyone everywhere.
Yeah.
Most people with Parkinson's, most people don't, and they're suffering. And Michael and I are working on a couple new books. I think 10 Secrets is the next one on path, and we're going to let people know what are these secret, and they shouldn't be secrets. We're going to let people know where are these great ways to get care for anyone, anywhere. My email today was like, can you find me a Parkinson's specialist in Thousand Oaks, California? And, I gave him the best I could, but it wasn't good enough for him. And I think I forgot where else I was asked yesterday. We need to bring care to people instead of people to care. And we need to increasingly make these care models well outside of neurology, speech therapy, physical therapy, nutrition, available to anyone, anywhere that needs it.
It occurred to me the hot topic in medicine and everywhere is AI. Is AI going to make it speed the endeavor of these revelations as well?
Yeah, so let me just we address AI a bit in the book Parkinson Plan. We were able to interview dozens of people, by the way, all over the world to understand, better. And some people were Parkinson specialists and some people were not. And I think one of the most important fundamental concepts for folks listening is to remind ourselves that AI is a tool, automated intelligence. It's a tool, okay? And so it doesn't tell us why, it doesn't tell us the upstream, but it is a very powerful tool. How powerful of a tool it is evidenced by the recent Nobel laureates that are all collecting their awards. And AI has accelerated the process of protein discovery, target discovery, the understandings of biology. And so there are real, tangible things that this technology can help us with. It's certainly going to be very powerful in some cases for, let's say, supplementing, let's say not replacing, hopefully not completely replacing, doctors and healthcare providers, but for getting people access, in a system where we don't have access to questions, to answers, to other things. So simple things like that can be made so much better, in terms of the decision making. But the application of AI to every level of research, whether it's understanding the biology of the disease, like all these Nobel laureates that are collecting the prizes, or it's understanding how to access healthcare in different areas, or it's clinical research. I think that the tool itself is very powerful. We just need to keep perspective that we shouldn't be just blindly investing in AI. People talk about the AI bubble. We should be trying to identify the why, where we need to go, and then is this the appropriate tool that can accelerate it and decrease the amount of time it takes us to get to answers along the road. And so I do believe that there are, already great aspects of AI, but I also will tell you that most experts that we talk to, predict that 90% or more of all these AI startup companies are going to bust. And part of it is that we have to focus on the why more than we focus on the what. So if we focus too much on the what, then it will be a bust. I have really good confidence from the folks that I've spoken to all over the world, and I think Ray would agree with this too, that folks that are integrating AI into their research programs are using this, responsibly as a tool to move the field forward. I think that there are some, I know this is going to sound, like, maybe less than optimistic, but there are some people that might be trying to make a buck here or there with startup companies and investments and things like that. And so I think folks should be weary of AI is going to cure everything. AI is going to do this, buy this thing. It's going to change your life with Parkinson today. And so we don't want people to get preyed upon, both in the investment sense, but also in the disease sense. But AI is going to play a role in where we are going, and it's up to us to create the dialogue to make sure that we use it responsibly, and we think about it in a very simple sense. It takes us this long to get where we need to go. How about it takes us this long? And if you can't see my hands are moving closer. So I think anything that catalyzes and reduces the amount of time it takes for us to bring out innovations, both in access and in care, both in basic research and in clinical research and applying to humans, I think is something we can all get behind.
Thank you.
One thing that comes up to me as you're both speaking is two challenges that I don't know AI or anybody particularly has a solution, but I'm just going to raise them, is dealing with people being stigmatized by the diagnosis, and then people, I'm going to use Bradley McDaniel's term, demoralization, that they get the diagnosis and they're not sure what path to take, and then that paralyzes them so that they don't even know what question to ask you, Ray, in their emails. They say they need a neurologist, but I think that's a huge challenge. I think some of it is generational, I think possibly our generation, because of the
Stigma.
the using of technology
Oh.
kind of got rolling and took off, and I think the younger generations do a much more excellent job. But I do see for people who are diagnosed later in life, it can be a huge hurdle to get over. Was there a question in there, Angela? I don't know. Any thoughts about that?
I do want to, I do think there was a question in there, and
Okay,
I
good.
think that one of the largest unmet hurdles is demoralization because we haven't appreciated it. And for folks that are listening, it's would be abnormal for you not to get a chronic progressive degenerative disease and not be demoralized by that. Okay, if you weren't, I would think there's probably something wrong with you. So what is it going to take for the healthcare system to respond in an appropriate way? And that we should expect that, we should anticipate that as a potential outcome, that people are going to show up. And when Elon Lewis and others have studied this and put data to this, and actually I was just reading about this yesterday, and there's a number of papers that are out now. It's a pathetically small number of papers about demoralization and Parkinson, but since the original index paper came out in the journal of Neurology, now there have been several other papers, and people are beginning to talk about it. Could be as common as 1 in 5 and 1 in 6. And here's the spoiler alert for everyone. You don't have to be depressed to be demoralized. You don't have to be anxious to be demoralized. You don't have to be apathetic to be demoralized. Now you can, those things can go together. And so the idea that you're just going to throw a drug at it or an antidepressant or something and make it go away is not the right approach. The right approach is to say to people, hey, this is normal. We expect this, and you're here with us, and we totally expect and we anticipate this. And we've treated a lot of people with this. And here's what we can do to see if we can reinfuse you, put a little bit of rocket fuel in you to get you kind of reinvigorated, and then to readjust to what life is like, because life changes. Same thing in demoralization for caregivers and care partners. You have to have a great caregiver, care partner in order to be successful in Parkinson. The reason that Karl is successful is because he has Angela. No Angela, Karl is in big trouble. Okay. But actually, the data shows this to be true. And we have been embarrassed, and I challenge all of the men in the practice when a woman comes, when it's opposite to the Karl and Angela show, when it's opposite and it's the woman with Parkinson, they do less well, and we believe they do less well. It's because the male caregivers are not as good as the female caregivers. And so we have to challenge them. So when it comes to demoralization, you can get demoralization on both sides of the equation. So we need to spend as much time with our caregivers and care partners because we know that their success is so important to the success of Parkinson in general. But also, we have to recognize demoralization, call it when we see it, engage people, realize it may not be a single pill, but also realize that as we can help people to adjust, that we can get most, if not all, of these people back. But we have to make that investment. And that investment is not going to happen in 6-minute appointments, 5-minute appointments. It's not going to happen with AI. It's going to happen because we're going to sit down and we're going to acknowledge people. We're going to meet them where they are. And we're going to acknowledge that 1 in 5 or more of people are going to have it at any point in their journey. And probably the majority of people have it. And those who don't have it, I'm surprised and impressed. Maybe we should study you, because I expect everybody should get demoralized at some point on their journey. And so let me just ask Karl, just throw it back to you, Karl. And you've always been so inspiring, but also so open about your journey. Have you been demoralized at all at any portions of your journey?
I've had maybe a day or two of downtime, but usually when that happens, Angela wakes me up, and I've I had 40 years of Parkinson's and been very little demoralization. I'm very fortunate that I've had
Well, there have been times we've faced challenges
uh,
like with
death,
medication dosing, you know, that we
and death
can't, huh?
and death.
And death, yeah,
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
but more about, you know, not knowing what the path is. Like
yeah,
when
yeah,
you face times where it
yeah,
looks like the medication's not working and
yeah,
tearing apart
yeah.
the regimen. What are you doing on a daily basis? Are you drinking enough water? Are
It's a
you getting
diet.
enough exercise?
Yeah, yeah,
That in itself is
yeah,
a huge,
yeah,
and it took both of us to look at it in spreadsheets
yeah,
to kind of pinpoint where the troubles were.
yeah.
And
That's
like
true.
you said, it's over the course. So I think there have been
But
moments, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
deep, deep declines, no,
no,
very
no,
few.
very,
But I think it is always challenging because it is a chronic disease. It's a huge undertaking. There's so many small little things that, you know, pebbles in the road that knock the train off course. I mean,
yeah,
or if I'm going through something and at the same time, or you know, there's an injury and you can't exercise as much as you wanted to, then how do you course correct for that? And
yeah,
it's you really it's a deep, for the fact that some people with Parkinson's deal with executive function problems or issues. It does take an organizer to kind of move through that. And if you have two
yeah.
people who are dealing with chronic conditions and they have to manage both of those and keep each other on track, I think that's a
Yeah.
huge undertaking. There, I answered for you. Sorry.
I also, when I was first diagnosed, I was sure this is before the internet, which is a long time ago.
Well, it was out there, but it just wasn't in your hands. Yeah.
It was it's just 80, 89, 90. I was finally got a diagnosis. Well, prior to diagnosis, at around 17, I had symptoms, and there's no internet and nothing to read or about the illness, and I don't know what I had. I was sure I had a brain tumor of some sort or something. And so I realized this is pretty serious. I could have a brain tumor. So when they told me I had Parkinson's, I was like overjoyed because they said that, it was treatable. But there was no. But it was demoralizing when they said it has it's chronic, it had, degenerative and progressive. Those are the wrong. That's the wrong terminology to give a new patient. Suddenly you have no hope. I mean, I've had 40 good years. I've had challenges, but it's a livable disease. You just need to make changes changes to your life. And you still have a very good life with Parkinson's. It just you need the certain fundamentals you need to make in your life to live with Parkinson's.
But it is a full-time job.
It's a full-time job, but that's the hard part. Is finding manage it's manageable, but it has to be managed every day, 24/7. And that maybe that can get a little demoralizing at certain times. When so much time with your Parkinson's and not so much other things you want to do with
your family, your work, etc.
Yeah.
Life.
So I guess that's the revelation of having Parkinson's.
But I think that's back to what you said, Michael, that there has to be a better way to surround the person, to let them know there is hope and there is a path. But there has to be an ownership piece. Yeah. Well, there has to be an empowerment piece, a hope piece, an ownership piece. If you don't take ownership that you're going to have to be proactive or active, then the other ones kind of fade away. Then you have to spend more time building all the other stuff up. You have to kind of get those pieces, like you said, on the board and moving them around. You have to be willing to say, well, that didn't work, let me try something else.
Yeah,
Or
that's
but fitting that into family responsibilities, job responsibilities, etc., I think is really, really difficult, because if you get diagnosed late in life and you've never had to face that challenge, I think that's similar to, I'm sure we knew it when Karl's mom was diagnosed with cancer. She just didn't know what to do with a chronic condition in her 60s. Why? Because she had lived her whole life and not have to manage anything like this. And unfortunately, she wasn't the best in taking resources. She just didn't look for them. She just kept on doing what she always had done. And did that impact her care? Probably at some point it did.
Well, let me ask you all a question. I know it's your interview, and Ray and I are going
it's a conversation.
But when you read the book, did you get like a little pissed off? Because like one of the things that we've heard from the very first launch of the book is people were like a little more than a little pissed. They're like angry. There's a bit of tension in the field, and it wasn't, it was interesting. Ray and I have talked about this. It wasn't like we woke up and said, let's rile it, let's stir the pot up and get everybody angry. But there was, for us, a sense of, well, this is touching off a nerve where, it's good, because in order to get active, sometimes we've got to get a little bit irritated, a little bit angry. Like, were you a little angry when you read the book? Were you a little irritated? What were your emotions?
This has been going on for a long time. It seems like it's gone in stages. We went through pan. We went through stem cells. I went to Capitol Hill 20 years in a row. We
fought for the veterans. Yeah. We fought for the getting their classification for disability. That
advocacy.
Yeah,
we built advocates, a team of advocates with Japan, and.
But I got angry about the poisoning. I mean, basically, that's this is the nice copy that I got out of the box that Ray left me. Books. Mine upstairs have lots of flags and a lot of underlines. Like, why didn't we know this? Yeah. And why didn't anybody say anything about this? And then I'd read the stories, about people being unprotected and doing these things, and people we knew, and not getting the care that they, being rejected. I can't remember which veteran it was. She, they just discounted her multiple times. Like, can't you see the trend? I can see the trend. Open your eyes. Why can't you see that there's all this is connected? And the approach just, it seems so segmented or walled off, like I think the book broke down the walls. At least you put everything on the table. Yeah. Like I said, for years I always said genetics loads the gun and the environment pulls the trigger, and to have to do a 180 and say, just a second, there's been an update. This might not be genetics. This might be exposure.
Yeah. I never made the connection. I grew up in the heart of the rubber capital of the country,
Akron.
Well,
and then we started unraveling, that Karl and his parents lived in the house by the golf course much longer than his two brothers, so they may not be as affected as the fact that Karl got Parkinson's, Karl's mom got breast and lung cancer, and then Karl's dad eventually got Parkinsonism in his 80s. So, you start rethinking, winding everything back. That kind of makes you angry.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, we didn't intend to. It was an unintended consequence.
That's okay. I'm happy to say it. I guess the question is, what do we do with the
fire?
The fire. I don't see in this current climate, I can't, I live near DC anyway. In this current climate, I don't know how we move the needle forward as advocates. There's so much to unpack, and I don't know. I haven't.
Where do we go?
I'm ready to sit on the steps at the NIH, but I don't know that anybody's home to care that I'm sitting on the steps at NIH.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot that can be done. So I don't know if you saw that the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin tweeted out, I think last Friday, that they're going to revisit Paraquat. And that, I think that happened because people like you made your voices heard. I mean, his email address is zeldin.lee@epa.gov. You can say, Dear Administrator Zeldin, thank you very much for your promise of action on Paraquat. It's long overdue. We appreciate your efforts. Can we extend those to chlorpyrifos, this pesticide that's estimated to cost 26 million kids, American children, 16 million IQ points? Can we make sure that the bans on trichloroethylene and perchloroethylene are put into place? So these are very, very tangible things. About everyone listening can ask their kids' school to stop spraying pesticides on the school grounds and on sports fields. People who like to play golf can ask their golf superintendent to spray less toxic pesticides and to spray less, and to notify your neighbors of when you spray. So there are lots and lots of things. We put these all in the book, the Parkinson's Prevention Pyramid, things you can do as individuals, things you can do in your community, and things you can do on a societal level to change the course of the disease. I was speaking to Dr. MacArthur, the chair of neurology at Johns Hopkins, and he does HIV neurology. And he says, I'm going out of business because we've done such a good job at preventing HIV that the neurological complication, the number of cases of HIV is falling, and the neurological complications of HIV are falling. He may have to find a new subspecialty. What a wonderful thing to do. If we can do that for HIV neurology, if we can do that for polio, right? There used to be polio treatment centers. There used to be people like Michael and Ray who were polio experts. Michael and I would be hard pressed to name a polio expert. We can just get rid of diseases. Diseases are not permanent fixtures of society. They are transient. And it's 2 centuries of Parkinson's disease is enough. It's time to say goodbye.
How do we monitor the golf courses? Is there a solution for that?
Yeah, so Karl, whose stories featured in the book, grew up next to the 13th hole of a golf course in Charlotte, North Carolina, and at age 17, his parents tell him to sit up straight. It's a moving story and one of my favorites in the book. So thank you for sharing it, Karl. So we want to start. Can we measure pesticide levels in the bodies of golfers, and can we compare it to non-golfers? So we're working on doing a study like that in the new year. We're trying to raise some funds and to do it. But we want to see, are pesticide levels higher in golfers than they are in non-golfers? Are they higher among people? Do their levels go up after they've played a round of golf? Are they higher among people who live near golf courses? And if they are, then we can take action. And then it begs the question, what can we do to lower the risk, to lower these levels, just like we've lowered lead levels in people? If we start measuring things, we can start managing it and start preventing diseases, and not just Parkinson's, because these same chemicals are linked to a wide range of neurological disorders from the very young to the very old.
And we haven't even said anything about glyphosate, which I'm really concerned about as well.
You have to get Boss Bloom on to talk about glyphosate.
Well, how about putt-putt courses? Putt-putt courses? Is that a healthy aspect?
I don't know about all the plastic.
I'm Dr. Brittany Krzyzanowski if there's any increased risk of Parkinson's disease if you live within a mile of a miniature golf course.
I hope they're not spraying on miniature golf courses.
I hope not either.
But there's an awful lot of plastic.
There's a lot of plastic.
If anybody was going to study it, I think it would be Karl Robb.
Oh no, I don't need another responsibility. Well,
I will tell you this though, just as a teaching point, as we're all laughing, but people are listening. It does turn out that the highest part of a golf course that gets the most pesticide on it are putting greens, and those are the most tended to per square inch. So, just take that piece of information to the bank.
It makes you wonder if places like South Carolina or and Las Vegas, where there's concentrated golf courses, if you see a higher percentage of Parkinson's in those areas, I wonder if.
Well, and one piece I was rereading before in preparation for this talk was about living near highways and roads and the toxic exposures about the highways in the neighborhoods. And I maybe I missed that the first go round, but when I reread it the other day, I was like, wow, I'm just stunned. And a lot of those, unfortunately, those roads are put in neighborhoods that already have other challenges at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right.
Well, we're almost out of time, so I just wanted to give Ray and Michael one thing to leave everybody with. I mean, the book is just chock full, but what is the one thing that you think out of the tour that you've made that has been the most impactful to you about the impact of the book and where we go moving forward?
3 words for me. I tell everybody, I write it in a lot of people's books. Tell your story. How we're going to get there is not by Ray Dorsey and Michael Okun. We're going to get there because Karl and Angela Robb are going to tell their story over and over and over again. And getting people to tell your story and get involved, that's where it starts. We are a product of our culture. The more we talk about it, the more we dialogue about it, the better chance we're going to have of, reducing the amount of time. You smiled when I do that with my hands, reduce the amount of time to get to more effective strategies for treatment, for care, and for prevention in the next generation. So 3 words for me: tell your story.
Excellent.
So,
Ray, we lost your audio.
Yeah, we lost your audio.
Can you hear me?
Faintly.
No.
Yes, no.
Yay, you're back. Okay.
I think we're seeing the seeds of a movement. I think we're recognizing that a lot of Parkinson's might be preventable. The Lancet Commission said that 45% of dementia, Alzheimer's disease may be potentially preventable. We've seen stroke, for example, the number of new cases of stroke is 30% lower than it was 1990. And I think we're seeing that the seeds of this movement are just not just residing within the Parkinson's community. There are moms like Kim Conti who want to create non-toxic neighborhoods so her sons who like to play baseball can play baseball in sports fields without pesticides. There are people in the ALS community that would like to be able to play soccer without having to be worried about developing ALS in the future. I think there are lots and lots of moms around the world who want to have children whose intellect isn't impaired by pesticides in their communities. I think there are lots of people living near these contaminated sites who are wondering what health risks that they have been exposed to without their knowledge and without their consent. The broader we make this coalition, the faster we create something, not destroy something, but we build something together. We build a world where Parkinson's is increasingly rare. We build a world where 1 in 3 85-year-olds don't get Alzheimer's disease. We build a world where 1 in 31 8-year-olds don't get autism. We build a world where ALS and brain cancer are increasingly rare instead of increasingly common. We have this. This is a challenge for our generation. We're in the same generation. This is a challenge for our generation. We should embrace it, act on it, expand it, and realize that we can create a world where little Karl Robbs, little Angela Robbs live in a world that's largely devoid of these terrible conditions.
Thank you both so much for coming and speaking with us today. And we will continue to tell our story.
And we look forward to see what comes next from you guys. I look forward to seeing you at the World Parkinson Congress.
No quit.
Phoenix.
There's no quit in us. So we are going to keep moving, and we're inspired by both of you, and what you do is so important. What you've been doing for now into your 3rd decade. Keep doing it. Keep inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much
for your time and for all your work.